Built as a post-war competitor to the likes of the Grumman Goose, the short SA.6 Sealand was a small utility flying boat that could carry between 5 to 8 passengers, and was designed to ply its merry trade into and out of the rivers, lakes, and sheltered bays, as well as prepared runways of some of the world's most remote locations. However, while the Sealand would not share in the same production success as the Goose, what resulted was a perfectly serviceable and endearing little aircraft that would see extensive work with many different operators. Development of the Sealand began immediately after the end of World War II, where, in a largely misled mindset among British aircraft builders, it was believed that flying boats would still maintain a strong presence on the market for civil aviation, despite the fact that land-based airliners were starting to show performance, flexibility, and size that exceeded even the most formidable flying boat models available at the time. The general opinion within the UK's aircraft manufacturing industry led to many notorious post-war failures that either never left the drawing board or never actually entered commercial service due to a lack of interest by prospective customers, perhaps the most famous example being the Saunders-Roe SA.45 Princess, one of the largest flying boats ever to fly, but never worked in revenue-earning service due to its main proposed employer, BOAC, setting their sights firmly on jet-powered land-based airliners. For the Short Brothers Company of Belfast, though, this firm had essentially made a name for itself thanks to its slew of pre-war and wartime flying boats, producing the Short Sandringham, a demilitarized conversion of the wartime Short Sunderland maritime patrol aircraft, which was proving itself in various corners of the world. At the same time, the company was undertaking the development of the Short Solent, essentially an improved derivative of the Sunderland for the civilian sector, although the general desire of the Short Company was to build a dedicated brand new flying boat range that wasn't a simple conversion of a wartime design, leading to 3 concepts being drafted: the SA.6 small flying boat, the SA.7 medium flying boat, and the SA.8 large flying boat respectively. Luckily for the Short Company, they were quick to realize that the days of large and medium-sized flying boats had been left behind in the pre-war era, and thus wrapped up these potential aircraft before they had left the drawing board, focusing solely on the SA.6 as this appeared to have the biggest sales potential. The SA.6 would be sized competitively so as to work from constricted inland lakes and other narrow bodies of water, as per the contemporary Grumman Goose flying boat of 1937, the firm announcing in July 1946 that the new SA.6 would be christened the name Sealand, and would comprise a 5 to 7 seat commercial amphibious aircraft. Design work for the Sealand was split between the company's Rochester works in Kent and its home facility of Belfast in Northern Ireland, the former working on the hull and tail unit, while the latter focused on the wing and engine configuration, the design taking many cues from the larger Solent, but also incorporating the latest advances in structural design, including the use of draw-sunk stiffeners for the ribs and bulkheads. The wing of the Sealand, meanwhile, was given a higher aspect ratio than the Solent to improve both its rate of climb and efficiency in cruise flight. The resultant design was quickly brought to fruition as a running prototype, and comprised a high-wing cantilever monoplane with 2 engines, a single fin and rudder, and wing-mounted stabilizing floats, combined with a retractable tailwheel undercarriage for operating onto prepared runways. As for the wing, this was a modified Göttingen 436 aerofoil, built in 3 parts with TKS leading-edge de-icing boots, the hull of the Sealand being a near-rectangular section of all-metal construction, with alclad stressed skin flush-riveted onto the planing bottom, into which the main wheel swung up into its sides, and the tailplane was also of an all-metal build with a 2-spar structure, the overall dimensions of the Sealand being a wingspan of 61 foot 6 inches, a length of 42 foot 2 inches, and a height of 15 feet exactly. For power, the aircraft was fitted with 2 340 horsepower de Havilland Gypsy Queen 73 6-cylinder inverted inline geared and supercharged air-cooled engines, which had the ability of propelling the Sealand to a top speed of 187 miles an hour and a service ceiling of 21,000 feet. With these engines, the aircraft was capable of a climb rate of 880 foot per minute, and required a takeoff run on water of only 2,505 feet, the total range for the Sealand being 495 miles, and weighed 9,100 pounds when carrying a full complement of passengers, crew and cargo. On January 22, 1948, the prototype Sealand, Golf Alpha India Victor X-ray, made its first flight from the Belfast works, taking off on water as the aircraft had not been fully furnished with an undercarriage, together with several other pieces of equipment. Early test flights of the Sealand revealing persistent drag problems, which were remedied by way of lowering the engines and modifying the vertical tail surfaces. Land-based testing followed soon afterwards from the company's Sydenham airport, and although proposals were made to output the second Sealand prototype with Alvis Leonidas radial engines, due to supply difficulties when procuring the de Havilland Gypsy Queen 73 power units, no Sealands ever emerged with the Alvis power plants, while the official production quantity of the type was sanctioned by the Ministry of Civil Aviation in mid-1949. Following the launch of the prototype, a total of 4 pre-production aircraft were assembled, the first of which was retained by Short for demonstration purposes and was used to try and market the aircraft to various small bush airlines in areas such as Norway and Canada. Tragically, the Sealand demonstrator, Golf Alpha Kilo Lima Mike, would come to a bitter end on October 15, 1949, when during a sales tour to potential customers, the flying boat crashed into a mountain at 600 feet near Spegarid in Vest-Agder, Norway, due to low visibility, killing the pilot, the Short company sales representative, and 2 Norwegian buyers. Sadly, even without the crash of the demonstrator in 1949, commercial interest in the Sealand was very subdued, as despite the fact that pilots from across the world complimented its rugged structure, good amphibious control on sheltered lakes, and easy flying manners, there were a number of problems that made the aircraft an inferior choice when compared to the Goose. These included the difficulty for pilots to land and control the flying boat on the open seas, together with the airliner being generally underpowered thanks to its Gypsy Queen engines, thus leading to proposals being made by Short to create an upgraded variant dubbed the SB2 Sealand 2, which would be fitted with 520 horsepower Alvis Leonidas LE4M 9-cylinder geared and supercharged air-cooled radial engines, a mock-up of this aircraft eventually being built, but unfortunately never coming to the running prototype stage. While the general sales performance of the Sealand was indeed underwhelming, with its most notable loss being a prospective order made for 6 units by the British West Indian Airways Company, who ultimately cancelled their proposed clutch of aircraft in 1952 after trials illustrated its poor open-sea performance, the SA.6 did have its fair share of shining moments. One example was when Sealand, Golf Alpha Kilo Lima Whiskey, later Sierra Uniform Alpha Hotel Yankee, was internally furnished as an air yacht, the cabin being lavishly appointed with luxurious wood trim and leather fittings at the order of a private client in Egypt, and was christened the name Nadia, while in 1951, one Sealand had the distinction of being the first post-war British aircraft to be sold in the United States, when an American customer, the Christian and Missionary Alliance, took on Golf Alpha Kilo Lima Tango, and operated it across the Dutch East Indies on relief flights. The most notable user of the Sealand, however, would be the Indian Navy, who acquired a batch of 10 enhanced Sealands, which featured dual controls, increased fuel capacity, and uprated engines, all 10 of these models forming last-of-the-line orders that were delivered between January and November 1953, with Sealands operating as part of the Indian Navy until their final retirement in 1965. The overall build-out of the SA.6 Sealand eventually came to 25 units, and thus made it the last British amphibious aircraft to be sold in mass production, of which other users of the type included the Yugoslavian national carrier JAT, who put their sole example, 1951-built Yankee uniform Charlie Foxtrot Juliet, to work on short hops to narrow coves and lakes up and down the Dalmatian coast. This unit would later be sold to the Yugoslav Air Force as a patrol aircraft, and eventually preserved at the Aeronautical Museum in Belgrade, one of only 3 Sealands known to still be in existence. To summarize, the Short SA.6 Sealand was an aircraft that presented many endearing features in the role of a short-haul utility amphibian aircraft that worked well on flights into and out of lakes, fjords, and inlets in some of the world's most remote regions. In the end, while the overall success of the project was dragged down by its underpowered engines and poor open-sea performance, pilots who made use of the Sealand had nothing but praise for its otherwise remarkable flying manners, a subtle but poignant last hurrah for the lineage of Britain's legendary flying boats.